been a very interesting day, 2 days, and yesterday we had a lot of discussion on the new frontiers that are opening up in RE and the need to scale up and what are the different avenues. And I think towards the end of the day we did have some discussions on ESG and what is the role of ESG. And Ashwini in yesterday's presentation also placed it very strongly, the need for this kind of a transition to also take into account the impacts and other developmental issues, as it was put yesterday. So I just want to kind of take a step back from, we are all moving forward, but I just want to take a step back and look at the entire this transition and how are we looking at this transition from a perspective of the kind of impacts that it is going to have, and whether we have accounted for those kind of impacts even within the ESG frame or any other frame that we can talk about, or whatever we want to call it, we can call it that. So when we talk about developmental projects themselves, given that they have the word development attached to it, it is considered that it is good and it is for the people, and always this it is for the greater good is what is how it is pushed, and that hasn't changed. And right from the colonial times, like whether it is a building of a canal or like dams that started off this entire trajectory, until now, whether we are talking about floating solar panels. So the thing has always been the greater good. And if I can just mention this one thing, like I think it was in the 1920s or the 30s when the Tata built this dam in somewhere near Pune. Around 11,000 people were displaced, and they started the first satyagraha of marching of people who had displaced due to development in 1930s in Pune. So from that till now, we have had the scale of just in the last 3 decades of people who had displaced is over 50 million in India. And specifically, we have the Adivasi population, which who constitute around 80% of the population, constitute more than 40% of the displaced people, people who are displaced due to development. And this is something that we do not take into account, and this is something that whether it is displacing for coal mining or displacing someone for a ultra mega solar power park, the impact on those communities are the same, that they lose livelihood. They have because recently some of me and my colleagues Vani and Deepmala, we had gone to Jharkhand. Our friends from Jharkhand are also here for a field visit in North Karanpura thermal power plant. Like, I think for us it was an eye-opening thing. One, we had not traveled till that far before, so that is on us. But it was such a beautiful place, which was destroyed by years and decades of mining. And even in this power projects which was going to be built, the effluents are, there are pipes that is just built across a river, which is going to pollute the entire place. And the fly ash or coal dust have become part of the environment and the ecology of these people. So much so that they were like, even understanding of how to get out of it is, not even a question there, because of the mining that has happened. And they say like, yeah, till this mine is going to expand now, and this other mine is going to expand, and these are not just displaced once, they have been displaced multiple times over their own lifespan. And that is very real, and these implications are very real. And whether, and if one says, oh, this is the thing with fossil fuels, no, there was also a study, I think Anu mentioned about the Riva ultra mega solar project that has happened, and some of our friends had gone to Pavgada in Karnataka, and here 13 acres of land it has been leased out. And yes, there is money attached to it, and that money is 21,000 per year for those who have given the land. And that 13 acres is not wasteland. And this is something that we have. Like, okay, it's a dry land. Is even in yesterday people were mentioning we need to move towards the rural areas because you have more wasteland, because urban is constantly changing, urban structure is constantly changing, so we need to go to the hinterlands or the rural areas where you have wasteland. No, there is no wasteland. Their land is multi-dimensional, as people say. It is not just, if it is not cultivable, it doesn't mean the land does not have any use. You have pastoral communities who live based on, who depend on those land. You have, the land is accessed in multiple ways by the local communities. And this lease or the compensation that one pays goes only for those who own that particular land. But land has uses beyond the ownership, because there are many people who are livelihood depend on not the who do not own it, but there are, you have entire agricultural laborers who depend on the land and other local economy that is associated with it. And the dry lands also have vegetation, whether it is groundnut cultivation or other forms of ragi and millets and those things which do not need so much water. So those are the cultivation that had happened in Pavagada, which do not anymore, at least in that 13,000 acres. And you have those communities who are dependent on it, who had to sell, mostly pastoralists, who had to sell their cattle because now they do not have a water source, or they cannot afford the fodder that they have to pay. So in that, I just wanted to, there are multiple examples, but the underlying point here is when you do not think of the implications, and when you think, oh, it is bit of an issue. It could be bit of an issue when you are seeing from one side, but unfortunately, like, it is the poorest of the people who sit on the richest of the resources in the country. So when we talk about we need to test for earth minerals for cathodes and everything, and it's kind of scary for me, because what if it works? And then you start mining for more minerals. And like in the now it is not just the land, but now we want to mine more minerals in the oceans. And you have a host of projects, whether it is Sagarmala or the other that is kind of now moving towards the ocean, that we need that resource also. What about the fishing communities there? And just day before yesterday, we had this consultation with a few of them where they pointed out the extent in which now there is going to be a whole attack on the coast. And the communities are up in arms, like against the Sagarmala projects, because it is not just a resource for them, it is a livelihood. And these are the communities, when we talk about linking it to climate change and conservation and everything, and that is where the hypocrisy really comes, is the irony stands there, because these are communities which have conserved these places for centuries. Because it is not that they just live there, because their livelihood depend on it. Even if you want to think about it from an economic basis, that their livelihood were dependent on it. So they need to conserve it so that they can survive in a longer term. So it is not just about them taking it, and unlike any other companies where you just need to loot the resources and then you move on to the next ocean, the next forest or anything. So these were part of communities who were conserving these natural resources, but today all of that is in a very different, put in a very different framework. So then coming back to what is this ESG framework? So we have had development without any of these considerations, and I think some of them are here who had from the Narmada movement, whose intervention created the first ever independent commission, Shripad, the independent inquiry commission that happened from the World Bank, because they questioned, and it was not just because of that one movement, but before that also across continents you had like movements questioning the impacts of some of these financial institutions are having on the people. And through that, they were able to influence to the extent that World Bank had to finally withdraw its association with the Sardar Sarovar project. And it was based on the kind of impacts, whether it is displacement or the number of villages that actually went underground. Like even today, we talk, some of our friends talk about this one village on Manibeli, where they have seen, I don't think we will ever be able to see because it is under submergence. So that is the kind of impact. And hence from there, the need for environmental and social safeguard policies, and that is the thing that started off from the 70s, and to the extent that today, after almost 2-3 decades, it has become a norm with whether it is World Bank or IFC or any of these multilateral development banks, that they have a social and environmental safeguard policy. There have been violations where at least once you have a policy, then there is a way in which you can at least say that there is a violation. So that was an outcome of, like, I think 20-30 years of struggle. And so when we come here and when there is a ESG framework, and that is where we talk, what is the difference? So if that was already there, then why is this new term? Why are we talking about this new framework? And as Konkana rightly pointed out, because it comes from a different history, from the Who Cares Wins report, as Konkana pointed out. And is it just a report? And that history comes with, I think, Kofi Annan, who was then General Secretary. So he had, under his leadership, it was a committee that was formed by all the financial institutions, big financial institution, any one of them, you have Goldman Sachs or any of them. And name it was, I think, around 21 global financial institutions who came and then who wrote this particular report. So that is why when Shantanu was saying, okay, I'm going to present it from the market side, there is no market. The entire ESG framework was meant for the market side of it. Because when you talk about this environmental and social safeguard policies, those talk about the impacts. And even very clearly, whether you read the RBI consultation paper or the SEBI consultation paper, they are very clear about that separation. When we talk of risks, it is not an impact risk. When the risk in itself, it is about the risk to the financial institutions because of the kind of environment. And that is where, that is what is coming from the Who Cares Wins report. So the premise is to protect the financial institutions which are investing, protect the companies and the corporates who have been investing in this developmental project, and that now, people are climate aware. There have been, not in India, but globally, companies had to pay big money in order to, escape from the climate activists or environmental activists because they have violated norms. And so that is when, even though the report came in 2004, and from 2004 to 2008, we had a Who Cares Win process that was going on. But I think it was only from 2008 that things started really picking up. And I think the pandemic was a game changer there again. And they thought, okay, no, now we need ESG policies. And we'll see all of the policy changes even within India. In 2007, RBI has a guidelines asking financial institutions to have safeguard policies or anything. But the first one, we only see that happening in 2019 or 20. And now we have 8 banks which have ESG policies. Again, coming from the ESG policy, not from the safeguards framework. So that is the difference that we have from the existing ESG policy. And because when the basis of the framework is to protect institutions, then you have to adhere to certain policies, like whether it is an impact assessment, or because that is now the norms, because globally we have the financial institutions have been forced to recognize these things, so they have those in their paper. But on the other hand, we have even the environmental impact assessment was amended in 2020 that you do not need public consultations anymore. You have exceptions for many projects, like Konkana already mentioned some of them, that you don't need environmental assessment or consultations anymore for these projects. So you dilute the loss here. So even if you have on paper that, okay, I'm going to do an impact assessment, when the law does not require you to do it, how effective is that going to be? And mostly financial institutions rely on the thing that they follow the clearances and orders from the ministries. And laws are easy to change, rather in India, unfortunately. Well, and not just India, when you take the risk-free business or the ease of doing business framework. So globally, you have a shift towards this big corporates and making it easier for those investment, and that has not changed whether it is a shift towards RE or newer form of energy sources. So hence the need for a environmental and social safeguard policy that would take into account consultation with the people, that would take into account free and prior informed consent, that would talk about the communities which are directly impacted by these projects. So that is one thing that CFA is also in the process of framing a social, environmental and social safeguard policy that would have all of these things into consideration, and it is irrespective of whether it is a solar project or any kind of developmental project. Because I think I'll kind of end. I'm going to end here, because the fact is, if we do not consider these things, and if we do not have take into account some of these factors, then we are bound to make the same mistakes over and over again. Then the transition from one energy source to another is only going to be a techno fix. It's only going to be a different, you're using the different technology. And when you only look at the entire framework of climate risk to carbon, then you are not taking into account, because if you only do that, then definitely nuclear energy is one of the cleanest source that is possible, but not necessarily for people who are probably living in Kudamkulam, right? And when you go, or many other places where you have the nuclear reactors. So, and let us not do that mistake again. Like, let us not say, oh, this is a bit of an issue, because if you do not, then you have to go reverse these things, and which is much more difficult. Like whether, I think Comrade Franco is here, like he used to say in 2003 we had a credit boom, and the banking sector went into investing in every sector because it was deregulated. And in 2015 the bankers were thinking whole other story, right? Because once they had the NPAs, once they understood that these long-term projects also have right now cost overruns and all of these things, then today, because of that NPA crisis, and stating that NPA crisis which was created, it was the government which said, go give loans to every other, whether it is a thermal power plant, whether it is telecom, and all of those things. It was the government which said it. And then in after 2015, using that NPA, today they are saying, like, we have to privatize the banks because we need smarter ways. So that is, the paradigm needs to shift. If it is a paradigm shift, then the paradigm needs to take into account all of these factors. Otherwise, it is not going to be a holistic shift, a transition or a shift, and we are going to do the same mistakes again and again. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr.